Hey everybody, welcome back to the Quest for the Bestest. It's the podcast from Backlot Banter where us four Backlot boys review every single Best Picture winner, and today we are going to review the second to last Best Picture winner of our list that the Academy has given the highest award. Today we're talking about the 1949 film All the King's Men, directed by Robert Rossen. This is a movie that we might be able to figure out what's about, but I myself do not know why they picked. I can't figure it out. I want to know by the end of this episode, come to a conclusion. But, you know, on this show, we've talked about a lot of films. We've talked about 93 films before this, in fact. And I want to remind you what we gave the film last time because we... Well, crap. What film was it last time? I don't remember which film was it.
Braveheart.
Yeah, you're right.
Listen. This is behind the scenes baseball here. I was looking at the Quest document and I saw your little icon pop in as you were like, last week we talked about it. He is not going to be able to. He's not going to be able to find this in time. Yeah, it was just fun to see the vamp in real time. Braveheart. That's the one.
Braveheart got a 7.3 out of 10, which landed it at the 59th spot on our list. So, you know, I recommend you watch the review to find out our thoughts about the film. We had a fun time watching it, but our critical analysis left us wanting a little more out of Mel Gibson's fantastical historical epic. But it's a good episode, and I recommend you check it out. Abram, I do believe, has a comment for us to round out one of our last little intro segments of our last films that we're reviewing here on the show. Abram, take it away.
Of course, as we're wrapping up, we must go back to our oldest and most favoritist son, John Tour 11, who writes the following on the Braveheart episode.
Who's going to get the last episode reader comment? That's crazy. You have to fight for it. Yeah, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Oof, it's going to be tough.
You're going to have to write a real essay, and we're going to have to, grade
Write
you.
something good, agree with me in the comments. There's a lot of different routes you can take to that one feature comment slot. But John Tour writes on Braveheart, I saw Braveheart about 20 years ago. I don't remember anything except for the fact that I, in all caps, hated it. I have to rewatch it, I guess. But I am so behind now in the quest for the bestest, so it'll have to wait. Are you guys really going to skip Sunrise, which should be paired with Wings? No, John.
No.
We are actually not only going to be reviewing Sunrise, but we are also going to be reviewing
Another film. Let's keep it a secret.
Okay, I like that.
We're doing some bonus episodes for the Quest for the Bestest. So even after the series is done itself, you're not free of us just yet. We have some things in mind, a recap show, and a couple bonus quote-unquote winner episodes. I think I'll leave it at that.
Put your thinking cap on. We've spoiled Sunrise. We're gonna do F.W. Murnau's Sunrise, but there's another film that is also in our
a quote unquote winner. Okay. So what we're gonna do then is we're gonna do those episodes, do our recap episodes, and then take a break for who knows how long. But keep casting your votes. Keep letting us know what you'd like to see us tackle after the core Quest for the Bestest. Because in that interim, we will be talking about it. We will be planning for whatever comes next for this show.
Because something is going to come next. I don't see my life without reviewing movies on a weekly basis. It's too much fun. It's too much fun. I love it.
Yes.
So
we should note for the audience, speaking of weekly basis, we're taking a week off.
Yeah, after this one.
No, good point. Yes.
Yeah, because I'm going to another land entirely. I'm going to the land of the United Kingdom.
The land of England.
Yeah. So you'll have to suffer with us a small break for that final episode.
Just a week.
Tug on your balls a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Like Argo.
Don't be inappropriate, Tucker, please.
It's a Quest reference. Come on.
That is a Quest reference.
Yeah,
that's true.
You got to twist them to make
reference.
it. You got to tug and twist to make it the big reference.
Timo, what movie are we talking about?
I said it at the beginning. I'll say it again. All the King's Men, 1949, directed by Robert Rossen. Who dares give... Tanner wants to give the plot synopsis before I've even asked for it. Tanner, take it away.
Yes.
Who dares?
So,
Maybe.
I dare. So, This film starts on a young street tough named Eggsy. Okay, he lives in Britain, and he's approached by Colin Firth to join the Kingsmen.
Tanner, watch the wrong movie.
Oh, shucks. Well, we're talking about 1949 Kingsmen. Okay, well, luckily I've seen that a multitude of times. So what we actually have with 1949 and all the King's Men is a cautionary tale of how absolute power corrupts absolutely. And it is corrupting absolutely one Willie Stark. Willie Stark. An old, middle-aged farmer who's in this nondescript hick. Thank you. An unnamed state somewhere in the south.
They were
I think
in
we
Kansas.
can understand it.
No, it's unnamed.
Oh,
It's
okay.
unnamed.
Okay.
Somewhere in the south. And Willie Stark has had it up to here with all these corrupt politicians, okay? So what he decides to do, he takes it on himself to run for office. And he gets the support of a journalist from a big city named Jack, from the capital of whatever state that they're in.
Yeah.
And through some rigmaroles and some things happening, he does gain some popularity and gets propped up by the electoral bodies as like a patsy, essentially, to make the certain candidate win. But Willie Stark's not about that. He gets up on the stage, he gives a fire and brimstone speech, and becomes he doesn't win actually that time, but he comes back with a vengeance the second time, and then he wins the governorship of our state. And then things devolve, and there's corruption, and, maybe he had good intentions, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and things of that nature. Crimes happen, people are pinned, and people go to court, and eventually he gets shot. Okay. I realized I was rambling a little bit too much in that, the plot synopsis, so I had to wrap it up quick at the end there.
Yeah. I think you did a pretty good job, Tanner.
Yeah.
What do we think about the film? What is our take on the movie to start off? What did you, I don't know, one of you other non-plot synopsisers.
I think there's one critical flaw with this movie. It's that released in 1949, and a movie of that period with the themes that they're willing to tackle in cinema at the time and restrictions that are placed on what they can show in films. This is a political film with a really weak political edge because it has to avoid saying anything particularly specific. And I found that to be infuriating and really just it was whiffing every time it tried to take a strike at something. And I don't like this movie very much. I think it's totally well made, totally fine in its production. I think acting is totally fine, not exceptional, but totally fine. But I think that combined with another major flaw for me is our main character of Jack Burton is just he's a nothing. He just walks around, he stands by the side of Willie Stark. He's not particularly interesting. He doesn't really make his own decisions. He tries to make his own decisions then doesn't go through with them, and it's just what? Who is this guy? Why should I care? I think that on face level, a politician corrupting story can be told in very interesting ways, but I think this is absolutely not the way to do it for multiple reasons.
Abram, your thoughts?
I like the movie. I mean, I'm certainly not going to sit here and be the All the King's Men defender because
Probably will.
I mean, I probably will just by I think sort of how the polarity of the field is going to unfold, and I'll be the opposite magnet, I think. But I think it's an interesting story in that up until the very end of the assassination, if there was no assassination in this film, you could basically one-to-one map this to the political climate in the United States from 2016 to 2021 in a lot of ways. And I'll talk about that if you disagree. But I think it's sort of an interesting and oddly prescient reflection on American politics and particularly Trumpist politics through that.
I think that was probably intended, yeah.
Well,
subtext.
I have thoughts there as well, but continue, Abram.
Yeah, through that just sort of observational lens of political exercise, I think it's kind of interesting. I like watching the plot unfold. I find the beats we hit to be sort of interesting, but I sort of just watch the film and go, yeah, okay, all right. I think it's boring So I think it straddles this line of like, there's a cool movie here, but it's also boring. That's it. I like it. I just like it.
Sure.
I think that what I like about All the King's Men is it begins a conversation in my head about other things.
Yeah.
Sure.
So as a
It's a
springboard, I
catalyst
think
film.
as a springboard, I think it's fine. As its internal narrative, I think it's okay. I get a little bit lost in the weeds of who Willie is banging this sequence.
Well, yeah, it does get a little lost in the weeds there.
And sort of why we're building this hospital or why we're playing football.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Timo, what do you think of this movie?
I was kind of unimpressed by this movie. I'm kind of like, I agree with Tucker in that it is simultaneously very inspecific about American politics, but to me, I definitely read this movie in a warning against populism because we just finished with World War II, and even though us Americans think that, Hitler can't rise to power here in America, here is Willie Stark, who, despite his good intentions, certainly seems to have a very authoritarian bent to him. And I feel like the film comes out of this area of just fear of populism, fear of being taken over by a Nazi-like government. And the resulting movie is kind of, he actually is trying to do good, but the film is like, oh, but he never really wanted to do good. He always just wanted power. Even though, like, in the beginning, he's being shown that he does want to.
Yeah, it doesn't really track.
I don't really think that the characters are super interesting. I feel like all of our female characters are real one-dimensional, real in there just to be little, bang things to have other male characters screw them and then fling them out when they're no longer useful. And the like, I don't know, the political messaging just doesn't land at all because, like you said, Tucker, it is not specific. This is we're getting at the beginning of Red Scare. There's McCarthyism is coming around in America. It's not. I don't think it's actually quite in the country yet, especially while they're making the movie. Maybe after it released, but it's just like tiptoeing a political movie. Doesn't land on all the stuff that I feel like it's promising to. And the plot is okay. I wasn't really grabbed by it. I was watching it to watch it for here, and I was trying to pay attention so I could have some thoughts about it. But despite my best efforts, it didn't give me a whole lot to chew on while I was watching it.
Yeah. Tanner?
Yeah, I'm gonna fall closer to Tucker and Timo, but to Abrams' credit, this is a movie that gets really close to me liking it a lot of times. It really runs up right to the line of me being like, all right, and we're just stopping. Oh, we're just stopping here? Oh, we're okay. I see what we're doing. We're not going to do anything like that's pushing the envelope a little bit or anything of that nature. We're just running right up to the line and playing it safe. And I think that's really what disappoints me about this film and disengages me from it, in that, yeah, I mean, I'm going to parrot a lot of what you guys were saying, where it's political yet like so it's apolitical at the same time, which is like a really interesting and disheartening balance to have in this film. I think there are good performances in here. I like the actor for Willie Stark.
Roderick Crawford.
Yeah, thank you, Broderick Crawford. I think he has his moments, and when he needs to sell like the fire and brimstone of his speeches, I think he does a good job. But then we get lost. I think we lose him a little bit. I think we lose him when he becomes just like a crime boss. We lose that. And to Abram, your point about this being a evergreen film, very applicable, because in doing some research for this stuff, I found that was some more modern readings of the film have been like, oh my god, it's so prescient to this film, I can't believe it. I don't think that's true. If we look at Willie Stark's character and we look at Donald Trump, I don't think there's as much equivalency there as a lot of people think there is. For a couple key reasons.
Get into that.
Yeah, well, for a couple key reasons that I want to point out. But yeah, like by and large, I think it also moves I think it moves too fast for its own good. It covers too much ground in too little time for its own good. Yeah. So yeah, but there are things to like here, I think. I think they're just muddled and covered up a bit too much by the negatives of the film. But I do have wins and noms if we want to start there
Yeah,
again in
let's-
this episode.
I have zero clue what other things this won.
Yeah,
or what
okay.
it could have been nominated for.
Well, it won only 2 other awards, other than Best Picture. It won Best Actor for Broderick Crawford.
Okay.
Not into that ranking for me.
Yeah. And Mercedes McCambridge won for Best Supporting Actress. She,
really?
she played
Sadie.
Sadie. Thank you. I was gonna say
Yeah.
something like that.
Okay.
This is also
I agree
her-
with that one. That one I
Yeah.
agree with. But
this
I
is
actually
her.
disagree.
This is
like,
her
pretty
film
strongly.
debut, by the way.
wow.
Oh, that's
First
interesting.
film. Yeah. And well, actually, before I move off that, I'll give a bonus point, one quest bonus point to anyone who can tell me what other iconic role Mercedes McCambridge has. It's another Best Picture nominee, off the beaten path one, a genre that they don't nominate anymore.
Oh, actually, I do know what she's in here.
Yeah,
And,
you don't.
She's in
okay.
The Exorcist.
Yes, she is the voice of the demon in Exorcist. The one
That's
that
a
possesses
crazy
the little
arc.
girl. Yeah.
Wow.
She is the person who says the iconic line, "Your mother sucks cocks in hell."
Wow. Okay. Well, I think that she gives a better performance there. I
Yeah.
don't love The Exorcist, but that's obviously an iconic line. I think my problem with her winning here is I found a lot of moments where her line delivery felt like so stumbly. It's like, okay, well, they could have taken that again. There's especially this one moment where she's walking out of the office after she finds out that Willie has been sleeping around, or implied sleeping around, or like just taking pictures with other women, and so she's jealous. It's kind of hard to pin down because the movie sort of like weaves and dodges around like talking about like relationship
And infidelity. It's like he's not
Infidelity,
He's not
yeah.
infidel. Oh, but he is.
Yeah, and she says the line, "I'll kill him. I'll kill him." And I'm like, that's one of the worst line readings I've seen in a long time. And so I'm frankly very surprised that she was A, nominated, but B, won. I did not like her performance. That's a pretty minor thing in the grand scheme of this movie.
Yeah. Other noms, quickly I'll go through them. Robert Rossen was nominated for Best Director. John Ireland as Jack Burden was nominated for Best Supporting Actor. Robert Rossen wrote this film, was also nominated in Best Adapted Screenplay, and it was nominated for Best Editing for editors Robert Parrish and Al Clark. I have some interesting trivia about the editing of this film, the editing process coming up.
Look at that.
Yeah, where do we want to start? I think it's a good place to start. Go ahead, Timo.
I kind of want to start with the politics of this film because as
Sure.
we were talking about it at the beginning, it just kind of some specific examples from the film were brought to mind, wherein they bring up a real live political critique of America, and then in which they do absolutely nothing with it. And the one that really struck in my mind was there's a quick sequence towards the beginning of. Well, it's in one of his campaigns. I think it's in the second one where he starts, building a lot of steam, and he starts getting checks and getting money, and he gets a lot of campaign contributions, and he says and it's like known to us in the film. Some other characters tell us that he's been making deals, and that the deals seem to be very opposite as what he says while he's on the campaign trail. But the film does actively shows us how the money is influencing him, and then never ever again decides to be like, oh, okay, well, so why is he doing these corrupt things? Is he doing it for power? Is he doing it for money? The film wants to center on this kind of nebulous idea of power and how Willie likes to be able to tell people what to do and to have his lackeys running around him. But I don't think the film actually shows enough benefit for Willie to be corrupt to make it super believable that he would then go and be supposedly lining his pockets and doing all these things that we know corrupt politicians in the country do. They take campaign contributions and then go around and say, oh, well, you give me $40,000, I'll do whatever you want. So why do you include this in the film but then not expand upon it, not use it as something that is in the core of why Willie should be viewed as a complex and a generally dislikable character? He's got his front. I also find that Willie's front, where he's like a populist that wants to build roads and make hospitals, is a bit more believable than the front that he put than the other side that shows where he's a corrupt guy. The film, I feel like, doesn't strike the right balance between making us think that he is simultaneously good and simultaneously bad. He should be either a misguided good guy or a lying facetious bad guy, but I don't think he is either of those in the film.
I think part of the reason why is I'm sort of beginning my opening perspective on the film and trying to defend it, and I'm basically stumbling through every possible beginning of an idea I have, is because, and buckle in for this one.
Okay.
Oh, great.
I sort of think of Don't Look Up when I think of this film.
Okay.
Wait. I don't. I like that movie though.
In that both really have a whole lot to say on like a I'm writing my high school like social studies paper, and so I'm gonna keep including a bunch of facts or ideas.
Sure.
And they're all gonna be sort of put in conversation by the fact that they're in the same like physical space as one another.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's this part of me that looks at all the King's Men as like this like basically educational exercise, and like what essay could I write about this film? I watched this for class. What can I write about it? Ultimately, I think you can write a lot of things because the film is both hyper specific and hyper not and non specific. Can you be hyper non specific? I'm not sure. I think you can be
very extremely broad.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, because the film is not about Willie. I don't really think, ultimately. Because
it's not framed around him; it's framed around our journalist character. You're right.
Yeah, which is interesting that he is the supporting actor nominee here,
and that I don't buy that. For my read of the film would reverse those roles. I think, and that's sort of why I think this is such a perplexing film to talk about, because it is sort of about getting campaign donations from oil and like being a populist and making decisions that benefit you and blackmailing people and rallying the support and making of the people across the land, and they come to your defense sort of blindly. I'd be very curious to talk about the Trump parallels, Tanner, because I don't think that the life of Willie Stark and the life of Donald Trump are the same, but I think that the cultural position they both end up inhabiting is quite similar.
Okay, yeah.
And so I kind of just scratched my head thinking of this movie, because like you're right, Timo. There's no real conclusion to draw other than the fact that Willie Stark got money from oil companies, and that's bad, or it just happens. This is sort of a movie that says these things all happen in American politics, and frankly, they're just happening.
Yeah.
And I think the one unique thing this film has going for it is that in being about Jack, although he is really nothing more than a conduit for the audience, you sort of get to see things. This is like the most boring theme park ride ever.
Mm-hmm.
You get to see all the sights. You get to see the corruption. You get to see like the political facade. You get to see the infidelity. You get to see the parade. But you move on from it. It's all animatronic vignettes. I am the oil check.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and then you move down the track.
Well,
so that's
sadly,
why,
we never get an animatronic vignette of like the actual populist payoff of any of Willie Stark's things, and I think that's an essential piece, because we are told and we are shown that yes, the people still love Willie Stark, and we are meant to understand that he is doing some good things for the people. But at the same time, we're shown that newsreel at some point later in the film where it's like, yeah, poverty still exists, and how are people getting out of these big fancy schools if they can't, get out of the fields and stuff like that. I think that's there, but I do still think that you need to show some sort of political payout. Because
absolutely,
this film is, and I don't know how much you guys know about this historical figure, but this film is not even loosely based, very heavily based on the real political career of Louisiana Governor and Senator Huey Long, who is Willie Stark.
I totally figured it was based on a real guy. I was like, this is based on a book. This is absolutely coming from someplace in history that just was 90 years ago, and I don't who remembers a Louisiana governor who was extremely corrupt in the 30s or the 40s? Like, the modern audience is totally lost on that. But I suppose during the time they would have recognize that.
He was
basis.
a progressive, super progressive, super populist guy who kind of came out of the political woodwork and became very corrupt and all this stuff. He gerrymandered against his opponents. He did all these political dirty things, but to the benefit of the people that he represented, until of course he was assassinated. Some quick things about this as well. Robert Rawson said the name, it was a unwritten law that the name Huey Long never be uttered on the set of this film. I'm forgetting that Broderick Crawford studied newsreel footage of Huey Long to portray the character of Willie Stark. It was all there. So yeah,
their names are kind of similar too. I feel like.
Yeah, it's all this kind of stuff. But at the same time, I think that this is all a roundabout way of saying that you need to see some sort of payoff for Willie Stark's actions outside of just the dirty politicking. I think if you want me to buy that he is a uber popular populist, I need to see the people more and stuff like that. But I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, I think the reason the political edge of this film really loses me is because, frankly, I don't really understand the road that Willie takes to being as corrupt as he is. It kind of feels like it happens on a dime, because what we see of him in that first 30 or so minutes of the film is that he is a hardworking and like so incredibly honest guy that it gets him into trouble. And at first I'm like, okay, this is pretty compelling. And as they start introducing the idea of corruption and him actually succeeding, I start to be like, oh, okay, he's getting corrupted, and I understand where this is sort of leading, but a switch kind of flips, and maybe there's a little bit of a time jump, because they like kind of skip over him like succeeding and becoming governor. They just kind of do it in a
spitting newspaper.
Boom, boom. Willie wins. And then suddenly it's like everything happens at once. In a lot of montages, it's like he's building bridges, he's building schools, he's building streets, and everyone loves him, and this is awesome. And then we cut out of that, and suddenly he's just all the way corrupt. And he's bribing people, and he's okay with the fact that he's bribing people, and talking to people about the fact that he's bribing people. And suddenly, out of nowhere, he's cheating on his wife, and he's got like 3 girlfriends, and then he was probably doing something with Sadie on the side, but we never even see that until it's like done. And then Jack's old girlfriend is involved somehow. There's so many things that this film skips over that I think would have made this progression to being a corrupt politician a lot more believable and a lot more engaging, because as it stands, with the amount of time skips and montages that serve as time skips that we have, I feel like we're dropped into moments of Willie Stark's life in an incredibly unsatisfying way, where it's like, okay, I guess he became corrupt and started being infidelious. I actually don't know the word for that, but and it's just, I want to see that part. Like, that's the interesting part, is seeing this nice, honest guy corrupted, that we don't see that actually interesting part of his character arc.
The one key moment that you're talking about there, Tucker, is when he loses the governor's race the first time, and we are burdened with narration from Jack Burden being like, and then Willie went off, and then he learned some things about dirty politics, and he came back and he won. Spinning newspaper. Like, that's like the key moment of Willie Stark's character arc, and it's just told to us. It's
strange because it almost makes you feel as though the screenwriters didn't want you to in any way empathize with Willie.
Yeah.
Even empathize, sort of get secondhand empathy from watching him do things. Because you really only see him as a jackass. And it's interesting, Tanner, your point about seeing the people more, because you see the people as the collective, the people. You see them sparingly, but importantly, when he's sort of moving them initially, and there's what I feel is the moment of the film, if you had to pin the moment as he's giving his speech. But then we circle back around to the people who are marching into the city to surround the courthouse. And so it kind of makes me wonder as a viewer, who here am I supposed to connect to? And again, it brings me back to this notion of, I'm not really supposed to connect to anybody, I'm just supposed to journey past and through them. Because you neither see the people, but you also don't see the person Willie Stark except for when his actions are causing some sort of like interpersonal struggle amongst his most inner circle.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what's weird about the perspective of the film. Because you also don't get a whole hell of a lot about the inner circle. Because you talk about time skips, Jack becomes really like what do you say? Energized?
Destitute.
How about? Well, he becomes energized by Willie to the point where he leaves his job over the ideological differences with the paper,
Mm-hmm.
and then becomes remarkably destitute, and then finds his way over a series of montage images back into a $400 a month job. So it does feel like there's not any particular perspective to hitch your wagon onto. The people are there. Willie Stark is there, and I can understand that at some point he became corrupt. I get what Jack is doing, but like, what am I doing with this?
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think the big question is, you gave me a bucket of things. How am I supposed to assemble them? I don't think there's any instructions in the film.
Well, that's the thing that I think is very frustrating about the structure of this film, is because it's a simple story.
It is. It's
Guy,
not terribly
honest guy
hard
becomes
to follow.
corrupted. That's it. And frankly, the film is not too much more complex than that, but it's presented in a really awkward, jumbled way in which scenes feel disconnected from one another. There's not really scenes in the traditional sense in this movie. There are conversations in locations, and then we cut to somewhere else. And it could be 2 months later, it could be 30 seconds later, it doesn't matter. Character arcs kind of ebb and flow, and characters appear and disappear, and arcs and moments happen off screen. It's such a simple plot delivered in the most roundabout, like unintuitive way that makes it like satisfying on neither end for me, which is why I found it to be such a compelling watch as I was initially getting into it, because I'm like, okay, this is easy to follow as it's getting started, but then like the movie like fractures like a third of the way, and it's just like, here's a bunch of scenes, like go have fun. Willie, at a football stadium, Willie had a boat, Willie had a house. It's Willie all the time.
Because
Timo, you go ahead, and then I'm going to illuminate a little bit with some editing trivia here.
Okay.
Ooh.
So like the ways that the film starts, and he is this honest guy, and we see his attempts. I find that I'm really in when he's like, it's our corrupt. Here's the problem with this movie is like, oh my God, it hits the nail on the head so hard about what's wrong with local American politics. I remember when we started Quest and I was living in Minnesota, right? Those county commissioners in that little town controlled fucking everything, and they had the same power and the same methods as the county commissioners did at the beginning. And I was like, oh, let's get into this. Let's see, this like small town drama about like the silencing of
the stuff that
democratic
actually
values. That
human
is
beings, by the way, the stuff that affects you. Vote local,
like,
folks, because that's the stuff that affects
far more
you.
than the governorship or the presidential rate. Like that stuff is the real like political mess of America, and then we just blow past it, even though I thought there was real meat in what the film was setting up there
At the beginning,
at the beginning, and we're just boom, we're gone, and we're on to this next thing, and then all the facets of corruption when we see him, he's corrupt in his football enjoying. He's corrupt in like everything. And it's just like, there's not a lot of tact to it. And it falls in, I think there's a term I learned this semester called the tomato soup fallacy, where you can't say that two films that are like, that discuss, you can't just be like, the film discusses this. The film says something about whatever it is discussing, and you have to drill down and find what that thing is. And you can't just be like, these two films talk about this thing, and so then, they're alike in that regard. They actually say stuff. But this film, it doesn't. It just talks about it, and it doesn't, like, put it into that greater context of, so this is why this is happening, this is what it leads to, and the filmmakers don't make that push to be like, I think they do make the push to say that, like, oh, corruption is bad, but the brushstroke is far too thick and wide so that it doesn't get into the nuances as how does corruption affect people? How does corruption affect government's ability to like govern? None of that is in here. It's more like, oh, corruption is morally wrong, and our character is doing morally wrong acts, and thus we must dislike them, not because of any like political, logical explanations for why they're incorrect. Even though he starts out so correct. You're so. Why can't we see him change? Why can't we see him change? That would really do a lot for it, I think.
Absolutely.
I know this is the ultimate centrist film in how it discusses its politics because it's like the one like desert island of crossover that me and my parents share in our political feelings. It's that politicians are corrupt and that's bad.
Yeah.
You got everyone can agree on that, and it doesn't like try to dip its toe into either other camp, because it's like, yeah, Willie Stark starts out in a good place politically, and like talking his populism, but then we never see any benefit, and he just becomes more and more corrupt, and we are to understand that he actually isn't helping people.
What about the idea that like he could be helping people? The film, I think, tries to show us that he isn't helping people, but I'm not entirely convinced that his
it
hospitals
does
and
both
stuff
at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, it is far too centrist to make
Vague.
anything to make any soup out of this ingredients, you know.
But Tucker, you brought up some really interesting criticisms about, you know, how this film jumps and skips around, and how scenes aren't really scenes, and it's unclear when things happen in relation to one another. That's because this film had a hell of a time in the editing bay. Ooh. So they filmed a lot of stuff for this film. There was a 250-minute version that the studio was like willing to put out. They were like, that was a cut that's not a director's cut or a working cut or anything.
How many minutes again?
250?
What?
Yeah. Yes.
Was that 4 hours?
Robert Rossen basically is like, this is what we got. This is the whole story right here. And the studio wasn't happy with it, but they were apparently like kind of willing to put it out. So that existed after weeks of editing. They got it down to 250 minutes. So Columbia Studios, the head of Columbia Studios, Harry Cohn, was about to release that cut when he brought in Robert Parrish and told him, quote, "Select what you consider to be the center of each scene, regardless of what's going on."
Weird.
And that is how we got it down to whatever it is now, like 110 minutes or something like
hour
that.
40.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Cohn later credited Robert Parrish for saving the film after it won Best Picture and Best Editing, I should remind you.
It won Best Editing? Yeah, you're right. It did win Best Editing. Wow.
It's interesting because I think that there are moments of the film that are incredibly well edited. I think
that's a good point.
Like I think that we shit on the montages, but they communicate a lot of information. Like boom,
it's
right
the information
through
they skip over that's the issue. But the things that are communicated in those montages are communicated well.
Or even when the film is slowing down, I love the moment when he's giving his All the King's Men is based for about 15 minutes
at the beginning.
Yeah. And when it's being based and Will is given his drunk speech when he's finally going off book and finally properly orating. And we're sort of we're doing this like partial dissolve to Jack and then dissolve back, and we're in like this weird like dungeon setting with these torches on either side of Willie and everything. You sort of lose your sense of place. I think it does communicate visually this idea that Willie is becoming this larger-than-life figure in the minds of the people who are listening to him. But the film, instead of choosing to sort of edit for feel in that respect, it largely chooses to edit to string together the bullet points of what you must understand. Because there is something, to your point, Tanner, about when you're losing, what is that, 140 minutes of screen time?
Mm-hmm.
It's impressive that we are able to say, well, we got it all. We just are missing everything in between, right? Because what this is...
They cut it all out.
Yeah.
Right. They cut out the story of a 250-minute film. They left us with the plot of a 250-minute film. That's what this is. And there's moments when we get into the headspace of somebody finally, and it is the person in the crowd when Willie feels huge. But those are few and far between.
Yeah.
And so there is a mastery to this sort of edit to at least progress you through plot points, but there's probably a more resonant edit that focuses more on what populism feels like,
Sure.
opposed to how corruption operates in vignettes, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, or even how like the specific guys that got the downfall of Willie Stark, because that's what the plot and that's what a lot of our time is dedicated to, especially in the latter half of this film. It's Anne's dad is like a key
Uncle.
figure.
There's so many
uncle, or
characters, and it's so hard to keep who's who straight.
Anne's uncle is a key figure in like bringing down Willie Stark, but Willie Stark has dirt on him, or rather, Jack finds dirt on him and refuses
We never
to
find
share
out what
it.
it is.
We don't find out what it is because that's vague.
Yeah.
Jack finds out what it is, doesn't want to share it because he's like, I'm not all about this dirty politicking and
You're
stuff
talking about the
like
judge,
that.
right?
Despite
Yeah, the judge, yeah.
despite the fact that he's been gathering and repeating blackmail about countless other people that are,
This is
but
the
it's
one where he
like,
draws the line because it's his girlfriend's uncle.
Yeah, and they're also like from the same place, Burden's Landing, which I guess
Yeah.
implies that Jack Burden's family has some sort of power, but we never really see the rest of them. Only that fleeting moment.
another
It's just people in
interesting.
tuxedos holding cognac glasses.
Yeah,
all the
because
time.
the film visually connotes that Jack's family is very wealthy and is very high
Yeah.
class, and there's the stepfather in the family that Jack
Yep.
butts heads
true.
with.
But they only show up for what? 2 minutes
So,
of the movie?
Yeah, so what is the film trying to say about having these high class people involved in politics and having this guy who essentially plays poor? Jack
True.
is masquerading as a poor person most of the film. There's no consequences or thinking or any revelations about that fact. It's just in there.
I mean, I think that the movie. Well, it's tricky to draw the line, right? Of like, what do I project onto the plot beats of the film and what I believe
yeah.
they're about and what the film thinks they're about?
Mm-hmm.
Because I do think that the film is about class. I mean, it is
Yeah.
very concerned with class. It's very concerned with this idea of the hick. It is very concerned with, again, I mean, if we want to talk about it, we can. If we don't, we don't. This idea that Willie Stark, Donald Trump, is the voice for a group of working class people who either like till crops or mill steel. And when Willie Stark or Donald Trump is being attacked, you are being attacked.
Yes.
And
There's a specific moment, I think in the sort of like newsreel documentary, is about like the reason that people are so rallying behind him is because or maybe it's some narration from Jack, I think, where he's like, Willie said that if they're being attacked, then you're being attacked.
It's narration,
and that's why
yeah.
everyone really rises up
Well,
behind him.
But the thing about the newsreel that's interesting is that is like a pre-screening of a documentary, because Willie makes the remark of, I don't like the line that's like,
dictator or king or
It's-
savior or dictator or messiah is the line.
yeah.
Yeah.
And because I was thinking about Dune, that's why it's Messiah. What the film is constructing is this idea that you are working class, viewer of all the King's Men.
Mhm.
You can be tempted by a Willie Stark,
Yeah.
but Willie Stark is manufacturing
Tempted
your
by a
interest in
Willie?
him.
You say?
That's why I raised my hand, you know what I'm saying?
Well,
And that scene of screening the documentary is an example of how he is ostensibly sowing the discord that you are engaging with.
mhm.
So the film is like this disillusionment with this nebulous kind of political machinery.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so that's why I look at this film as like a lot of nothing, but also a salient point in there somewhere.
Because it
I think
does, it does include these aspects that we don't see all the time, like him being like, no, excise those lines from the film, or, oh, our newspaper won't run any more stories about this candidate because we are ideologically opposed to them. Like, newspapers these days would not dare admit to that kind of stuff, but it's still kind of going on in the back of their heads. And so just to see that and just to see it played out. I do kind of like your interpretation, Abram, and I definitely feel like it's supported by the film that we are supposed to identify with this lower class hick, large mass of people, and that the film is trying to tell us to be wary of characters like this who proclaim such goodness but are really actually working behind our backs. To me, reads very Hitlerian, very Nazi-esque out of World War II. We're not that far away from it. I think that the U.S. has not come to grips with this kind of stuff. I don't know. Is Robert Rossen an American filmmaker? Is he homeborn and bred?
research.
I would assume so.
Because to me, it
yeah.
seems like a lot of European filmmakers who are the ones coming into the country and being like, oh, you Americans, you think you're so far away from all this European fascism and stuff. Oh, no, you're wrong. It too can happen here. And they make movies
he's
like
American.
that. But the American side of that doesn't quite get to the point where it's like, oh, crap, this horrible stuff that just happened in Europe is equally as likely to happen here.
Yeah.
The other thing, and this is just like I have a plot comprehension question.
Okay.
Okay.
Because I was getting lost in the weeds by the end.
Yeah.
Willie's killer is Adam. Am I right
Yes.
so
Is the
far?
doctor.
Anne's brother.
The doctor, right?
Yeah, the
Yes.
doctor.
Okay, yeah.
Adam's motivation for killing Willie
Yes.
is interpersonal because Willie is having an affair
With Anne.
with Anne, and Anne gave up the information
About their
the
fair
judge.
Yes.
The
About
uncle,
their
yes.
uncle,
to
sorry.
Willie.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
You comprehended correctly.
the film, and this is again why my interpretation of what the film is saying about all of this, like this populist figure, is largely me kind of like, it's like you gave me a bunch of Legos, but there's no instruction, but I can kind of tell from the box what I'm supposed to be making.
Mm-hmm.
On like an interlocking level, there's no like call to action as a member of the class that is being duped by Willie, because Willie's comeuppance is largely personal grievance.
Yeah.
It's not even that the people became disenfranchised with him.
The people...
They're still
Yeah.
they're sitting outside being like, brother, I'm so fucking happy that Willie's free, and I've been saying, they say do not move. Man, this megaphone that represents Willie tells me not to move. I won't move, and they don't move. But Willie doesn't die because like people are like, God damn, you're building all these roads, but you're also like a bad guy. It's, hey, you're like having sex with my sister, and you made my dad
the dirty
kill himself.
politics that comes around to bite him in the ass. And
Yeah.
it is muddied by the interpersonal thing, because Adam also like negotiated with him earlier in the film to get a hospital built and stuff. And then he like just he's absent for a lot of the film after that, and he just kind of like emerges from a corner behind a column, then shoots him.
Yeah, and it's just another guy in a coat and a hat, and you're like, this could be anyone, frankly. And that's another problem about how many characters are that largely fill similar roles and all kind of feel the same way about Willie. Like, they become interchangeable, and I think that this is, again, to us trying to pin down what exactly were the motives here and how do those tie into the themes of the film. This is another symptom of the film being incredibly non-specific, like so intentionally non-specific that it becomes frustrating, because there is an interesting plot line there about this about the judge character that is Anne's uncle, and that Jack is defending by not giving out the information that he has some weird thing going on, but we never learn what it is, and that could complicate the political and thematic reading of this film in an interesting way. But they so intentionally keep it vague that to me it was like they had to rephrase each sentence in order to not refer to the thing that was the actual everyone's talking about.
Because he's like, I had forgotten about that thing that I
that
did.
information.
I don't even remember him. Everyone involved with that thing is dead.
Well,
so
it's
frustrating.
Well, the thing about it is, you give me environmental.
Yeah, we get some
or
clues about during Jack's research as to what it is. It's some like money. Like he was probably he probably took some bribes when he was really broke as a judge, or he did something wrong to get a job, I think.
Well, the thing is, there's a court case between like a company that's like either doing something to the land or like drilling for oil. It's something along those lines, and then a Native American name of the defendant.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And so I think you can draw the connection of exploitation of the land at the cost of the local Native American community, and the judge.
Is this
being
film
on the
based enough
take.
for that?
I think. Well, here's the
'cause
thing,
it's-
I think it is
because
It's
it
no
can,
cavalcade.
I think it is.
Oh,
I just
Cimarron.
don't-
No,
Excuse me.
Cimarron,
Cimarron. God damn it.
those two movies.
It's just like it's all through inference. It's all told through inference. But you know what isn't told through inference? The drunk driving storyline.
Oh,
No,
true.
that we get it. We get
Oh,
that.
that was a
all
great
out.
moment.
That is like the
Very-
only specific story
Yeah, and it's-
in this movie. And frankly, I find it to be
it's so
very confusing.
It's because it's so universally disagreeable. Everybody is like, of course that's horrible. Everybody is like, this is a terrible idea, and he's horrible for covering. Like, it's so cut and dry morally that it's like,
It's
of-
another thing.
of
It
course
is.
they
It
can be
is another thing of
specific.
like, if that happened in real life, both me and my parents could be like, "That's a bad thing that happened.
yeah.
That's a bad politician."
Let's just do plot comprehension again for a moment, because I think this is
Okay,
going to
here we
speak to where I think there's an issue in the editing. What do we learn about Tom, the son of Willie?
He's
Tom
adopted.
is adopted. He used to be this golden boy son, right?
Yeah,
that-
he's
that they-
honest. He's truthful.
He's honest and truthful, and goddamn is he an all-American footballing boy, right?
Mhm.
But
Yes,
he
he
doesn't
loves-
want to be?
Well, that's the thing. His
Yeah.
dad wants. Suddenly, when Willie's in a position of power, his son needs to be this sort of tokenized, like an all down home American, drink your beer, play your football guy. He's like,
Drink your
Dad,
beer, drive your car kind of guy.
that's what he ends up being. He's like, fuck you, Dad. I'm gonna go
That
drive
is-
like 100
hey, all American habit right there.
drunk driving.
Yup.
He drunk drives, gets in a car crash when the police are chasing him on motorcycle. Girl he's with dies. Dad
Yes.
tries to cover it up.
He doesn't want to cover it up.
He doesn't want to cover it up. Lisa, who's another female character in this film, and
Linda.
Linda, are you sure?
I think so.
Man, I don't
Double
know.
check.
The
Does it matter at this point?
the adopted mother of Tom is like, hey, that's great, son, that you're setting up to your dad now. He goes
Lucy.
to play.
There
he
you
goes. Right. That gets resolved.
Yeah.
He goes to play football. There are seemingly no charges pressed in this whole
Everyone
situation.
loves him.
It's 1949, and he's a white guy. He's fine.
But here's where we start to get. Here's where I think we get into hazardous waters.
Uh-huh.
He gets paralyzed. He's paralyzed.
Oh, and also the
Yeah.
dad of the daughter dies.
Yes,
Well,
he
this
also
is what we're
dies.
getting to. This is what we're getting
We'll
to.
get
Oh,
there.
I'm sorry.
Okay, we'll
I
get this
didn't
down.
realize the order there.
That's after the fact because
Yeah.
son gets paralyzed. He's things happen.
He goes back home to the sticks.
Where we close off this plot line is we learn that the father of the dead daughter
Uh-huh.
was beaten to death
Yeah.
by Willie's campaign.
So he didn't bring up any dirt or anything like that. Yeah.
But why? Because the film, and this is where I think this is where we're cutting the editing too fine. Because the radio says, man, if this guy hadn't gotten beat to death, everybody would have totally forgotten about this case. Because now years have passed.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're like, this thing that everybody forgot about is now suddenly back because this guy got beat to death in a ditch or whatever. Because Tom is now in college. Because he's playing for the state university that his father built.
Yeah.
So why does the dad of the daughter get beat to death?
I think you're reading too much time in there. I think it's just a couple months or something, like half a year maybe.
But the radio broadcast says
say-
everybody would have forgotten about it if they hadn't beat him to death.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's so weird. But I think that this is a problem of where the movie budgets its time and focus, because frankly, this is the most coherent plot line in the movie. This is a 25-minute chunk of the film. It goes beat by beat. It has characters that show back up. recurrently and interpersonal conflicts that come and resolve in like interesting ways of his son being paralyzed and then being exploited by his father. These are interesting concepts. And frankly, Tom is one of the more interesting characters conceptually, but it doesn't have too much impact on the rest of the film other than being a very specific example of Willie being incredibly corrupt and wanting to cover up a, as you guys are saying, so obviously immoral thing that everyone would agree is immoral. That's the only thing that really stands to serve. But I think it also comes at the expense of Willie getting more characterization where we thought it was missing, because we already knew he was corrupt. This doesn't add too much to that other than just like add another layer on that. And it's another chunk of the movie where Jack Burton is just useless. Like, what does he do? He just stands around in the background. And I do want to focus back onto Jack Burton, because I think all agreed before we heard the crazy news that actually he was nominated for supporting actor and Roger Crawford as Willie was lead actor, that this is a film framed around Jack Burton, who is...
He has the majority of the screen time.
Well, he does, but only by like accident, because he's standing around a lot. But
he's like in the movie a lot, but he doesn't like always do any.
I think he's
not an
next to no
role,
presence. He has next to no presence in this film, and it's Willie giving those speeches that, frankly, we're going to think about this movie for if we do it all. And Jack Burton being such a strange nothing guy is the real death blow for me with this film, because the film toys with the idea that he's becoming disillusioned with Willie's campaign, and he doesn't want to support these things, and he knows that what Willie is doing is corrupt, and you can see him ebb and flow through trusting Willie because he's such an honest guy, and then wanting to support him as he's rising up in power, and then shaking a little bit, and then instead of the film taking the path that it really, really, really seems like it's going to be going down, of him becoming disillusioned and turning against Willie and helping the people that are trying to take him down, including Anne, including her uncle, who are characters that we are supposed to sympathize with, Jack does nothing. Like, he just continues to support Willie, and then he does worse things.
With a really sad, depressed little face
his
on.
Act of rebellion, to be fair, is,
not sharing the information.
Yes, he's like,
But
I'm gonna give Anne's uncle a fair shake to like respond to this stuff instead of just digging it up on him like I have for the last several years of working for Willie's government as his hatchet man, as Jack is. But Doctor, you're right. It's not enough. It's not enough. It's not a big enough act of rebellion. It's not interesting enough. And ultimately, it has no impact because Anne sells out her own uncle anyway, which I think is quite interesting that, she's so ingratiated in the system that she sells out her own family member. And then her brother ends up killing this guy. Like, maybe the movie should be about Anne, frankly, but that's besides the point.
Yeah.
Here's something I'll say about Jack's character is that because he's such a wooden board and so uninteresting, every time we cut back to Board's Landing or whatever it's called, Burden's Landing. I'm just like, can we go back to can we go back to
I see
Willie?
That car on the raft and the sign. I'm like, oh my god, not again.
I just don't care about these people. Like they're because he is uninteresting. Those characters are interesting, but
I don't buy his relationship with Anne. Number one, they're supposed to have this like passionate relationship, and they were thinking about getting married at one point, and then that fizzles off, and then what the hell's going on there? But like, the connection to Burden's Landing gaggle of characters is already tenuous at best, and then half of them only show up for like a sixth of the film. So it's like I don't even know why they bothered, because that's also where like the biggest chunk of characters come from. I mean, there's like obvious D tier characters like, I don't know, Lucy's dad or Lucy. Sweets. Or like.
And that the little guy who's always running around that
sugar.
So not sugar, sweet.
I'm just getting reminded of Some Like It Hot every single time he says it.
Okay, go ahead, Abram.
I got a theory for you.
Okay,
it's just a theory of a movie theory.
Hit us.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching.
Film theory.
I think that a lot. I think that the runtime made it from 250 minutes to 110 minutes by cutting off half of the movie to begin with. Because the movie ends with the turning point for Jack's character.
Yes. Thank you.
Because right before we cut to the end,
He's like, we gotta tell people that Willie was a bad guy, actually. Dun 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 dun. This has been a Columbia picture.
It's basically like, it's like when Timothy Chalamet sees the Sandworm Rider in Doom Part 1 and the movie ends.
And then it's like if we never got a Doom Part 2. The darkest timeline, by the way.
Well, the thing is, if we never had Doom Part 2, Doom Part 1 would still stand as like the archetype of amazing audiovisual filmmaking.
Yeah.
Whereas this just stands that the other half of its story is like, what the fuck,
Okay, so I want to do quick thoughts because I don't think we're gonna have a lot to say about Sadie because Mercedes McCambridge did win best supporting actress here.
I will say,
I mean, she's okay. Go ahead, Timo.
The reason why I'm like, okay, I get the win from her is that she really read very clearly to me. Her performance indicated her character very well, and I was like, okay, we're in the 40s, we're in a noir movie. Okay, evil woman, sexually attractive, and who wants to corrupt our characters. I'm like, okay, this is the character that we're dealing with now. And I felt like she played with that idea by going back and forth between being like, oh, I'm gonna be a seductress and I'm gonna entice you with my body to do things that you shouldn't do, but then go back and be like, oh, I be a regular, like, normal person that has wants and desires. To me, when she expresses the like, when Willie leaves her and she's like, oh, like he left me, like he's gonna do this. He did this to his wife. He did this to me.
I'll kill him.
Yeah, in that scene, even though I kind of agree that line is real funky, that scene has like a real character moment where our characters actively change their thinking and they demonstrate it and they become more real because they have wants and they have desires that are expressed and that the film toys with. It doesn't let her have that desire, but she does get to talk about it, at least, as opposed to, I feel like I don't really know what a whole lot of these other characters like want and as to why they are doing stuff because of the things that they want. But Sadie, I do. And even though she definitely falls off after that moment in the film, she is, I don't know, her performance struck me more than the other ones in the film.
I mean, she's got that like firebrand leading or supporting a lady, I guess, in a film like this. But she's got
the
that
vamp. She's got that vamp look.
Yeah, she's got the wisecracking like type of role that this character has down, and I think she's good in that. But ultimately, she ends up being kind of a non-presence as the film continues.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the reason why I'm not sold on that character arc, even though I do agree, Timo, that her motivation is probably the most clear in the movie, is that motivation is only explained to us after the fact.
Sure.
Like,
yeah.
I frankly didn't get any of the seductress angle that you got out of her performance. I sort of, because she's planted as a mole and then sort of becomes like, she starts to realize, oh, actually, Willie has political ability, and then falls in love with him off screen, and then they have a relationship off screen, and then we don't even, frankly, I didn't even realize that was like implied to be happening until she storms out and she's like, I'll kill him. I'm like, whoa. I gotta right back in this entire relationship that was between two of our main characters that I didn't even know was happening. That's just, that's a flaw of the script and the editing here, to just not give us a setup for that payoff, because it could be an emotional moment if I was more attached to Sadie and I understood her motivation for falling in love with Willie, why she found him so appealing, what sort of person is she personally. She sort of just shows up when she's introduced. Like,
yeah, that's
she doesn't get
issue.
a really good introduction anyway. And I'm like, hold on, who's this person? I don't know, man. This movie's so weird, and its setup is so lacking on things that when there's payoff, and its payoff is very lacking when there's setup. But they never really match up.
Okay, I want to talk about one last thing, because...
Can I do an analogy for that? It's like
sure,
you got two sets of magnets, and you're trying to put them together, but they're both facing the opposite way, and you're like, why won't these magnets connect? Because you got the two poles like right next to each other, just always pushing each other apart. And if you just swapped them and connected them, things would go together nicely.
I want
Willie
to talk
Pulls.
about Broderick Crawford as Willie Stark. Because
Really?
I think that he's like the one good bit. His performance is really strong when they allow it to be strong. That speech at the stump, as I think Abram mentioned, and I'm sure we all agree, is the best part of the film. When he comes alive for really the first time. And he talks about how he was baited into the system and how he was so naive to think that he could do good and stuff like that. That's like the one good bit, and it comes across in the edit and the camera and the direction choices when we are showing the faces of people and they're actually really invested. We cut back to Jack and Sadie, and Jack says he's doing it. He's really doing it. He's winning. He's doing the thing. He's giving a speech. Can you believe it? But he's really, really good in that moment. That was it got me on the edge of my seat. It got me to sit up and be like, okay, all right, movie's coming alive a little bit. And he gives a couple other speeches like that, and it's very clear to see why the Academy, even decades later, they're still a sucker for a big speech like that to give somebody an acting award. And he gives a number of big speeches like that, and I think what's important here is because I also I rolled my eyes, somewhat maybe harshly when Abram talked about how this is relative to the Trumpian era today. So I want to address that because I think the key difference is that Willie Stark starts out with good intentions, and that is not the case with our beloved 44th president of the United States.
Tanner's beloved.
Yeah, no one's beloved
Christ.
here. Let's be clear. No one's beloved.
It's the funniest president we've ever had, but I do not love him.
It's a good point.
Lenin.
Lenin.
Soda.
But we are meant to believe that at the very least, Willie started out with good intentions about wanting to help people, and that gets corrupted.
Yeah,
and
but are we really though? Are we really? Because there is a line in the movie that says
That's a good point.
that
Yes,
like
I know what
someone
you're talking
else is
about.
like, oh, did he ever really believe in this stuff? Like, I don't know. Why is the film complicating that idea?
I think though that you are, because what we see the moment with the children falling off the side of the school
When
they
everyone's
go-
That's
like-
so funny.
oh my!
That moment is so funny.
The shoddily put together school and a bunch of kids die, and Tucker was slapping his knee because he found it. His kids dying is
Tanner,
hilarious.
you laughed so hard at the hard cut to
Oh yeah, that's a
three
good point.
caskets.
Oh
That's a
yeah,
good
yeah,
point.
Jesus
I laughed
Christ.
too. I laughed too. I laughed at
Yeah,
that.
the
moment.
hard
They
cut.
did.
I thought it was very sad.
We
They also had a mass grave for all these kids because
Yeah,
everyone was at one
anyway,
funeral.
that is meant to be an empathetic moment, and
Yeah.
it is directed and edited as such.
all the
And
all
that
the
is
side
what
characters go, Willie, you're right.
Yeah, and that's what kicks off Willie's whole thing, and he brings that up in his first speech when he's drunk, and that's why I think you are meant to believe that he has good intentions, because we see that moment and we see how it affects Willie, and and then obviously, of course, it comes as no surprise to anyone here that I don't think Donald Trump started off with any good intentions, any intentions other than I want to be the most famous man on the world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, Tanner, you're
Worse,
right.
though.
I just think that the parallel you draw is more sort of about the cultural position that both arrive in.
I agree with your position that
Populism.
it's where he ends up that is more one-to-one, and we get the imagery of the guys standing around holding the tiki torches. I'm like, hey, what a prescient sort of image that is.
Where
huh?
do you that's prescient for us, but I bet you that was crazy after you've been like, oh my God, torchlight rallies in Berlin. Oh my God, it's here in Miss Obama.
Yeah. Miss Obama, or it's like Texas or Kansas or who knows where it's supposed to be. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think that also is part of the vagary of this movie that I found confusing at first, and I thought they were maybe going to elucidate some of these elements, but as we started this conversation with, in my opening thoughts, the apolitical, vague nature of this film, I think, is its real problem. Is why not just name a state? Why does that matter if it's a specific state or not? I guess they want it to be more generalized, but again, a lot like the miscellaneous bad thing that the judge did, it feels like they have to write around information. They never specifically give him a political party to make it more generalizable.
True. Yeah.
They never give a state or the names of really the people that he's competing against. All of the political elements of this film are just a politician has goals to help people and then takes bribes, and because it avoids even having like grounding elements like a political party, which every politician has, or a state, which every politician operates in, it feels like a nonsense story about. It feels like a story about politics, but not a political story.
Yeah.
Good way to put it.
So I have one. I've saved my favorite piece of trivia for last here.
Okay.
Oh God.
While Tanner's
yeah. On set.
pull up your scores. Think about what you're gonna put in while Tanner talks to us.
Because we complain over and over about how this film feels so apolitical and toothless. But that was not the case. That was not the opinion of one man to whom the lead role was offered. The lead role of Willie Stark was offered to the one, the only John Wayne.
Oh shit!
Really? Interesting.
Yes. And John Wayne made a big ole stink about this role being offered to him.
I could never play a role in which I help people.
Well, not quite that. He viewed this film as unequivocally un-American. He had a lot of things to say to this effect. I pulled a couple things here. So here we go. He says that he would never star in a film that has it smears the machinery of government for no purpose of humor or enlightenment. It degrades all relationships. It has drunken mothers, conniving fathers, double-crossing sweethearts, bad rich people, and bad poor people if they want to get ahead. What else did he say?
I mean, he's kind of right, but like...
Yeah. Oh, he also said, you can take this script and shove it up Robert Roston's derriere.
Oh.
He also caught the Huey Long connections. To make Huey Long a wonderful rough pirate was great, but according to this picture, everybody was shit, except for this weakling intern doctor who was trying to find a place in the world.
Jeez.
So, yeah. And funny enough, he was, John Wayne very much turned down to starring in the film, and instead starred in a film called The Sands of Iwo Jima that year, for which he was nominated for Best Actor, but lost to Broderick Crawford.
Poetic.
So here's where I'll end it. I recently watched Luc Besson's film Lucy.
Yeah, you did.
And
a lot like his, Willie Stark's wife.
I thought that Lucy was an awful movie.
Yeah.
Now, what I said in my Letterboxd review of Lucy is that Lucy is like a first-year philosophy major's perspective on like what it means to be alive and human consciousness and all kinds of shit.
Mm-hmm.
This is like your first-year poli-sci creative writing assignment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
It was like
so,
first day.
I leave the movie going like, yeah, okay, I get it.
Yeah, okay.
Because I do think that we are undervaluing, not to a major degree, but to a degree, the notion that we understood where the movie was going. We understood the arc that the characters traveled down. Even if we got the beginning point and the end point, we got it. And I do think that there is a message about sort of being wary of the guiles of populism here.
True.
For what, take that for what you will on a moment to moment, scene to scene basis. We are left with something. It's a drunk 19-year-old's hastily written essay about like American.
Started at 11:30,
right?
Due at 11:59.
Yeah.
About like American political machines and stuff. But I watch it and I go, yeah, it's kind of interesting that the son got into like a drunk driving accident. And it's kind of interesting that we're watching this person's good intentions become soured. And it's kind of interesting watching this journalist forego all of their morals. And I end up finishing the film, sitting down for Quest, and going, there's really not a whole hell of a lot to say about this movie.
Yeah,
and somehow
we've
manufactured an hour of nonsense, mostly for myself. I think I said maybe 3 minutes of useful material in this whole review.
Hey, much like the film itself.
but like our Quest episode, like all the King's Men, we reach an idea in the end.
That's true. We do. Indeed
Yeah.
we do. All right, shall we do it, folks?
Shall we put a number to this idea?
Let's do
Yes.
it.
Okay. In 3, 2, 1, go. Bing, 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 bing. Okay, we've got a score. It is 4.5. Let's look and see. We're going to have to do one tie-breaking film
Okay.
versus Gigi. Oh, I love getting to say that again. The point breakdown, starting at the bottom. Tucker gave it a 3.3. I gave it a 4.2. Tanner gave it a 4.8, and then Abram gave it a 5.5. So I would say we're all pretty much in the same sphere, but
Yeah.
Abram did come out of swinging with a higher opinion, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
what he
Well,
rated
you
it.
know.
The
Okay,
glowing score
so-
of 5.5.
Yeah.
Gigi, who thinks that All the President's Men...
All the
Nope.
King's Men.
All the King's Men. God, imagine if All the President's Men won Best Picture.
How many-
What a
I would
better-
put that
what a-
over Gigi.
Yes,
I would as well, but what about All the King's Men? Who would put that over Gigi? I know I would.
I would.
I would.
Well, that's
You-
going to
you
be...
say no, Tucker?
I said no.
Yeah.
I
Well,
think
because
one
Tucker-
is a more
Tucker-
coherent artistic achievement and more interesting to watch. Frankly, I think this film is not very interesting to watch. I think that your closing statement, Abram, I'd see as probably the biggest criticism I've ever heard here on Quest for the Bestest is that it's a hastily written 19-year-old's interpretation of a vague thematic analysis, which I think is the exact opposite of even some of the worst films that we've
Although-
watched here.
I think worth noting is there are other films like Gigi on our list. There are not a lot of other films like All the King's Men on our list, especially not ones from this era.
Yeah, it definitely, to me, plays as this social issue movie. Clearly, that must be why the Academy picked it, because they were like, oh my God, these ideas are
So true, Robert Rawson. So true.
And I
It's
just,
also adapted from a very
he's just
famous
like me for
novel.
real.
Yeah.
I just-
Yes.
I just remember really, really hating Gigi. Well, like, man, even though I think Gigi hits that visual interest much better than this film does, it's, colorful, saturated.
Mhm.
The runtime of Gigi and that movie really did make me feel icky about all those female characters. That movie made me feel far
True.
ickier than this one did, because at least in this one, our sexual deviancy, our infidelity, is like part of the plot and worked in pretty well, and is not just like
Well,
totally
it's worked in. Let's
exploited. It's worked in. It's part of the. I don't know if it's worked in well. I don't know. It isn't exploiting our female characters, I feel like, as consistently and as hard as Gigi is. Man, I just
Well, there-
hate that
yeah.
that movie is like grooming. That movie is about grooming, dude, and that just does not sit well with me.
I don't
Yeah.
remember Gigi at all.
I don't remember a lot about Gigi either. I just know that I think that My Fair Lady is just the far, far better version of Gigi. And All the President's Men, while Willie
Kings.
Stark is a philanderer, All the King's Men, while Willie Stark is a philanderer, it does not open with a song of an old man singing like, "Ooh boy, do I love little girls? Ooh boy." Like, oh, yeah, bad note, that Gigi. That's one of the few things I remember about Gigi.
Yeah. Well, there we have it. All the King's Men is going to go above Gigi at the 85th spot on our list of
Good God.
94 movies. So,
Yep.
woo, way down there at the bottom. But, I mean, this movie did have some value, I believe. I think that this stuff that we're thinking about, like showing American the political machine of America for what it really is, all that stuff isn't tackled so much in other films. And even though I don't think it is, they find the mountain to tackle, they find the mountain to go climb, and then they just like kind of don't climb it all the way. They begin, and then
They
they're like-
photograph it.
they photograph the mountain, and they're like, we climbed this.
Yeah.
So
It's
that's
like,
kind of
"Hey,
where
look
I
at this mountain. That's a mountain, right?" And we're like, "Yep,
Yep.
that's a mountain." He's like,
It-
"It's a mountain." Like,
It's
"Yep."
it's the this
Uh-huh.
car climbed Mount Washington sticker of like political movies. Is
Yeah.
that too much
Yeah.
of an East Coast reference?
I
That's
think
too-
it is
That's
an
too
East Coast.
niche. That's
Yeah.
too niche.
Yeah, sorry.
I really
Anyway.
had to pull my contextual knowledge to figure out why that was funny, Abram. Okay.
What am I doing?
Flying away?
Wings.
Tanner is
Wings,
flying away
wings.
because if you were not paying attention, you would have no idea. But if you were paying attention, Wings is our next and final movie of the quest for the Best Picture winners.
Yep. Oh
Is it
God.
about Red Bull?
No.
Oh, there's only one way to find out.
We're just gonna have to watch
the
it.
movie.
After a week hiatus, by the way, don't forget that we're taking a week hiatus and then finishing it up.
Boom.
This
Yeah.
is it. This is it, folks. And then it's not quite it.
But this is it.
It's it. But
This is it.
It's really not it.
but it's
Well,
not
it's
at
kind
all.
of it.
It's actually not it. There's no finality.
It's somewhat it. I would say it's largely it.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining me to talk about all the Kingsmen. Well, I got something out of it by the end.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. We will be back, not next week, the week after next, for Wings. The very first Best Picture winner ever is going to be our very last Best Picture reviewed. Boom. Man, it has been so long. We've been building for this moment for so many years, and it's going to arrive in 2 weeks. And
Oh.
until then, hold tight. I know you really want this this episode to come out more than anything, but well, you'll just have to keep cool, stay warm, and peace.
We all made a face because we thought you were adding "hold tight" to your outro. You're like, because you said it in your voice.
Mhm.
Like you do a special voice when you do the outro.
yeah,
You're
I
like,
know.
Hold tight, and we're all like, that's not right. That's not what he usually says, huh?
And then I go, "Bah, bah, 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 bah," and then I do the outro.
Do you think that Willie Stark would have carpooled with Noam Chomsky to Epstein's Island?
No,
Yes.
No harm, chomps. What really sucks is that now what the fuck? I mean, the ape Nim Chimpsky. What do we got to do about
What?
him, man? The ape Nim Chimpsky. I mean, he can't keep that name.
What are you talking about?